He was called the financial genius of the founding era, a Swiss immigrant who reshaped America's economy, yet his name is barely remembered today. He slashed the national debt, funded America's expansion, and even tried to broker peace in war. But his career was not without controversy. Hounded by political enemies, blocked from office, and underestimated at every turn, Albert Gallatin still left an imprint on the United States that few secretaries of the Treasury can match. Today on the JQA Treatment, we explore Albert Gallatin, his rise to power, his triumphs, his failures, and the mark he left on the nation. Before Gallatin was shaping America's economy, he was an outsider, a Swiss-born intellectual with a vision for what the United States could become. His story begins in 1761 in Geneva, Switzerland. Educated, fluent in multiple languages, and fascinated by Enlightenment thought, Gallatin arrived in the United States at 19, determined to make a name for himself. In his early career, he started teaching at Harvard and dove in land speculation. But Gallatin wasn't just a businessman. He had big ideas about government finances and fiscal responsibility. In 1793, his first major political challenge came when he was elected to the U.S. Senate from Pennsylvania, but he was kicked out just a few months later. Why? His enemies argued he hadn't been a U.S. citizen long enough. It was a humiliating defeat, but it didn't stop him. In 1795, his comeback came when he joined the House of Representatives, becoming one of the fiercest critics of Alexander Hamilton's financial system. He opposed high taxes, national debt, and the power of big banks, believing that the government should be more fiscally responsible. In there he said, "The true wealth of a nation is not in its creditors, but in the prosperity of its people." When Thomas Jefferson took office in 1801, he needed someone to undo what Hamilton had built, someone who would shrink the national debt and prove that a limited government could still function. That man was Albert Gallatin. Albert Gallatin's grand plan as Secretary of the Treasury aimed to cut the national debt, reduce government spending, and maintain a small federal government while still funding expansion and infrastructure. While successful in many ways, it had both positive and negative effects. The positive effects included massive reduction in national debt, in which Gallatin successfully cut the national debt from $83 million to $45 million by 1812, proving that a limited government could be fiscally responsible. Another positive effect was that he funded the Louisiana Purchase. He skillfully managed government finances to afford the $15 million Louisiana Purchase without severely increasing debt or taxation. This doubled the size of the United States and opened the West for expansion. While a fiscal conservative, Gallatin believed in using government funds for nation-building projects, such as roads and canals. His Gallatin Plan in 1808 was an ambitious infrastructure proposal to connect different parts of the country through a system of roads and waterways. Though not fully realized, it inspired later national projects. He established a precedent for budget discipline, and Gallatin's focus on balancing the budget influenced future administrations, emphasizing government accountability and spending. Gallatin's efforts to reduce military spending and maintain a small standing army and navy left the U.S. severely unprepared for the War of 1812, and when the war broke out, the Treasury struggled to finance it, and the military suffered major defeats. Once the War of 1812 began, Gallatin was forced to reverse his stance on debt and taxation, the very things he had fought against. The government borrowed heavily, raised taxes, and issued treasury notes, leading to financial instability. His vision for a national transportation network was never fully implemented due to political opposition and the war. Though some projects like the National Road were built, his broader plan was largely abandoned. After the War of 1812, Gallatin's fiscal discipline was discarded, and the government resumed deficit spending. His goal of eliminating the national debt entirely never came to fruition. His methods worked. By 1812, he had cut the debt nearly in half, down to $45 million, but then came his greatest challenge, that War of 1812. Gallatin's entire career was built on reducing debt, but war changes everything. And in that war, a conflict Gallatin himself had opposed forced him to do the unthinkable, raise taxes and borrow money. The Treasury was nearly bankrupt, and Gallatin had to turn to loans, tariffs, and even printing money, the very things he had fought against. In 1814, the British burned Washington, D.C. The government was on the brink of collapse. Gallatin was sent to Europe to negotiate peace, where he helped broker the Treaty of Ghent, ending the war. But back home, his absence cost him. With the war over, he was sidelined politically and never returned as Secretary of the Treasury. The Treaty of Ghent announcement said that peace has been restored, but at a cost that our children shall bear. After 13 years as Secretary of the Treasury, longer than anyone in history, Gallatin's influence faded. But he wasn't done yet. He tried and failed to run for vice president in 1824. He became an ambassador to France, negotiating key treaties. After serving as Secretary of the Treasury, Gallatin was appointed as U.S. Minister to France from 1816 to 1823 under Presidents James Madison and James Monroe. While there, he negotiated several key treaties that helped strengthen U.S. economic and diplomatic relations. The first being the Treaty of 1818 with U.S. and Britain. Though mostly negotiated while in London, Gallatin played a supporting role in securing this major treaty with Britain, establishing the 49th parallel as the U.S.-Canada border from Minnesota to the Rocky Mountains. It created a joint U.S.-British occupation of the Oregon Territory for 10 years and settled outstanding fishing rights for American fishermen in Canadian waters. At the Convention of 1822, mostly with France, Gallatin resolved long-standing financial disputes between the two countries, which had remained unsettled since the Napoleonic Wars. They negotiated repayment of French debts owed to U.S. merchants for seizures of American ships during the Quasi-War, and improved in trade relations between the U.S. and France. Prevented further economic conflict, reinforcing France as a key trading partner. Gallatin was involved in the final stages of implementing the Adams-Onis Treaty in 1819, which transferred Florida from Spain to the U.S. While John Quincy Adams handled the bulk of the negotiations, Gallatin's diplomatic efforts in Europe helped ensure Spain followed through on the agreement. He later founded the University of the City of New York, which is now NYU. His biggest regret, though, is that he never saw his vision of America without national debt come true. The government kept borrowing, and the financial system moved in a different direction after his time in office. He later reflected, "A nation must be frugal, else it shall be forever bound by the chains of its own creation." So what did Albert Gallatin leave behind? Let's break it down. He reduced the national debt more than any other Treasury Secretary. He funded the Louisiana Purchase, doubling the size of the U.S. He helped negotiate peace after the War of 1812. He built the foundation for what would become the modern U.S. Treasury system. But he lost his battle against government borrowing. His opposition to Hamiltonian economics didn't last, in which big banking took over. His political career never reached the heights of Jefferson or Madison. Albert Gallatin, the immigrant, the statesman, the economist, the peacemaker. A man who shaped America's financial system without ever becoming president. His name might not be as famous as Hamilton's, but maybe it should be. Next time on the JQA treatment, we turn to one of the most controversial figures in American diplomacy, Henry Kissinger. Was he a master strategist who secured peace in Vietnam and reshaped U.S. foreign policy? Or was he a ruthless manipulator whose realpolitik approach left a trail of secrecy, war, and global unrest? From Cold War negotiations to secret bombings, we'll explore Kissinger's legacy, his triumphs, and the controversies that still surround him today. Subscribe now and leave a review. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning history.